Ah, Red Dead. Few companies attempt to create games that capture the image of the Hollywood Western. Notable examples include Gun and the Call of Juarez series. Other games have Western settings or Western style levels, but many never break into the mainstream. At least, not until Rockstar burst through the saloon doors, gunned down every cowpuncher, flourished their revolver, and plopped down at the bar for a shot of whiskey. This is going to be a fairly informal chat/review kind of video. I'm not really sure what to call it. Shane and I are very excited about Red Dead Redemption 2 coming out later this month, so I wanted to do some sort of video talking about the Red Dead series. Because, everyone's going to be doing that, and we're bandwagon. Just as something to note, I captured gameplay for Red Dead Revolver off my Xbox 360, and apparently that just straight up breaks the game. It causes it to constantly flicker and glitch and crash at the same part a bunch of times, so sorry in advance for that. So, Red Dead Revolver. The first game in the series released on May 4th, 2004 in North America, and was released on the original Xbox and PlayStation 2. It also released on PlayStation 3 and 4 as a PS2 classic, and is also backwards compatible on the Xbox One. It received fairly mixed reviews on launch, earning many scores in the mid to high 70s with reviewers. Revolver is an interesting game to say the least. From a gameplay standpoint, it's nothing particularly amazing. It basically boils down to a third-person action shooter. You go through each level on a linear path, shooting outlaws and other various enemies with a plethora of revolvers, shotguns, and lever-action rifles. Sometimes you shoot people on a train, sometimes you shoot them in a town, and sometimes you shoot them in rocky places. And in many levels, you end up fighting a boss character, which usually consists of waiting until they present themselves so you can blast away at their health bar. One thing Revolver did to set it apart from the other games was its quick draw minigame. This would later evolve into the Deadeye system in Red Dead Redemption. Basically, you pull out your pistol after a countdown, and in slow motion you paint target points on your opponent, and based on where you plant your target, you will do different amounts of damage. If you score enough high damage hits, then the target is going down in the dirt. This puts you right in the shoes of the coolest movie western characters. More than the environments or the funny accents, these epic duels really sell the Wild West vibe Rockstar created. The game also has multiplayer, but I have no friends, so I didn't touch it. Joking aside, the multiplayer isn't really anything to write home about. It's basically you versus up to 3 others, duking it out in various levels inspired by locations from the story. Not anything mind-blowing, but a neat addition if you can get some friends on the couch for some good old-fashioned deathmatch. The story in Revolver is unique, if a bit goofy.
Oh, easy there, friend. Come on over here. Come on now. It's too dangerous for a man to be walking around in these parts. I deal in weapons and goods, see?
You play as Red, a bounty hunter out to kill the man who killed your parents. Red is joined by a cast of colorful characters including soldiers, gunslingers, Native Americans, and more. Gunning your way through bandit-infested towns, Mexican war zones, and even a crazy traveling circus. It's creative for sure, but some scenes and character representations can be pretty over the top and goofy. It makes the characters and the story much more memorable than having a bunch of boring tumbleweeds as characters, but the game is definitely more Ridiculous Six than it is The Man with No Name. Despite all this, Revolver still stands apart and is elevated by all these factors. Sure, it's goofy, sure the story might be a little derivative, sure the shooting is passable but not great, but it still stands above other games at the time that wouldn't even attempt to tackle a Western setting. And even back at this time, Rockstar was pushing out some of the biggest games that would go on to define their company for years to come. Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City coming out 2 years prior, San Andreas coming out in 2004, and Bully hitting stores just 2 years later in 2006. There is a level of quality that Rockstar achieves with each one of its titles that isn't always seen from their competitors. Sure, the graphics haven't aged well, and some of the dated checkpoint systems are not up to snuff compared to games that we're used to today. But despite this, I still think Red Dead Revolver is worth a playthrough, especially by anybody that is a fan of Rockstar games and wants to see where the true beginning of the series started. The game is relatively cheap these days, so it's not hard at all to get your hands on it and give it a playthrough. So, let's fast forward a bit. Rockstar decides it's time to release a sequel to Revolver. A sequel that improves and expands on what the base game started. In walks Red Dead Redemption, released May 18th, 2010 on the Xbox 360 and PS3. It is also available on PS4 via PlayStation Now and Xbox One via backwards compatibility. While Revolver has its own identity, Redemption is very much GTA in the Wild West. Using the same rage engine and the design principles as Grand Theft Auto 4, Red Dead Redemption is an open-world sandbox third-person action shooter. While GTA focuses on satirizing American society, Redemption takes a more serious or dramatic tone when it comes to its storytelling. Sure, it has its fair share of goofy moments and wacky characters just like Revolver, but the story definitely feels more grounded, at least more grounded than Grand Theft Auto. John Marston, a past outlaw, is thrust back into the lives of his former gang members as the government forces him to hunt them down and bring them some frontier justice. Caught in a time where society is leaving the Wild West behind, John is treated as a pawn throughout the entire game. Everyone he comes across uses him as a fix for their own problems, until John gets pissed off to the point of threatening their lives if he doesn't get what was initially promised to him. This kind of story mechanic offers a lot of opportunity for missions, but can get kind of old during the later parts of the game.
Come back to. There are fire bottles over there. Use them to burn down some of these houses.
And what makes you think I'd do that?
You want to find Javier Escuela, don't you?
John just completes tasks for people until they give him a few breadcrumbs and then ultimately cast them aside. That said, this is easily one of Rockstar's best narratives they've ever crafted in a game. The voice performances are believable and really make this feel like a realized world. And I think most people would say that this is the best Western video game that you can play. Swapping cars for horses and machine guns for lever-action rifles isn't as big of a departure that some would think it would be. The horses control in a fairly believable manner. Sometimes they can and will run away from you, and they can't climb too well, but other than these shortcomings, they feel fine to ride. If a horse should die, you can always wrangle or purchase a replacement. This makes horses always at the ready for players, which, while convenient for accessibility, it also strips away any significant meaning they may have to the player, something that is being iterated on in Redemption 2. Speaking of control, John feels okay to control. He kinda feels like he has iron boots on when he jumps. That is to say, when he falls fast and hard. He also has the problem that many Rockstar characters have where they aren't very nimble, but other than that, he walks, runs, gets into cover, and fights how you expect him to. Speaking of fighting, the gunplay feels great. The aiming system is more precise than it was in GTA 4. Swapping weapons via a weapon wheel flows much better than cycling through a list, a feature that Rockstar would continue to implement into future titles. The weapon sound effects sold the feeling of the time. They are louder, more metallic, and rough sounding in a way that distinctly separates them from the weapons in GTA. The introduction of the Deadeye mode also aids the gunplay. Slowing the game down and targeting individual areas of the enemies makes you feel like the ultimate gunslinger, especially when the game speeds back up into real time to show you quickly blasting out rounds against your opponents. Many of the other hooks in the gameplay reflect Rockstar's open-world design philosophies. Side quests are given by strangers throughout the world, often giving you tasks like taking out bandits or retrieving items for them. These mini-stories are pretty good and flesh out the world. Weapons and gear are unlocked throughout the game. Items can be purchased at general stores in many of the game's towns. There are a number of mini-games, including poker, blackjack, liar's dice, five-finger fillet, and others. These offer a nice break from the normal loop of exploration and gun battles. The main gameplay loop is going to the mission markers, watching a cutscene that introduces the mission, go on a horse ride while a conversation is had, and shoot some bad guys. This style of gameplay can get repetitive for some, but the missions are paced well and are different enough to keep your interest. The world design is probably the best part of the game. The game is mainly divided into 3 sections that are unlocked as you progress through the story. The world is primarily fields and desert landscapes dotted with towns and other environments. While there isn't any major city to explore like in GTA, the game features a number of natural locales that have their own distinctive feels, like the red rocky mountains in Mexico, the snowy forests in the northern part of the Great Plains, as well as the murky swamplands. All of these areas are unique, as well as give the world texture that many other Western games don't seem to have. In addition to the base game, Red Dead Redemption also has multiplayer, and it received a zombie-themed expansion titled Undead Nightmare. Friends could group up together and explore the frontier, participate in a number of death matches, duels, horse races, and other game modes. While the multiplayer lacked any sort of mission structure, it really did feel like an extension of the base game that was able to be explored with friends. Undead Nightmare acted as Redemption's version of DLC from GTA, like The Lost and Damned or The Ballad of Gay Tony. It offered a new story in which John Marston must find out how to survive in a West overrun by zombies. Familiar characters who may have found their demise throughout the story return as zombies, and you can even find rare horse mounts that are based on the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. The DLC clearly went for a less serious tone compared to the base game, but it was still very successful. It even included a new multiplayer mode called Undead Overrun, a wave-based survival mode where players had to defend a location from increasingly challenging waves of zombies. I only played Undead Nightmare once, and even though I am personally burnt out on all the zombie games we continually see every year, it is hard to argue with the amount of new content that this added to the game. Well, to wrap this up, I think it's safe to say that Rockstar created some of the strongest games in the Wild West genre, if not the best. Both Revolver and Redemption stand apart from the competition, due in part to the level of polish and the depth that these games have, but also because they are simply fun to play. They tell great stories with interesting and memorable characters, they bring you across fantastic and beautiful Western set pieces and environments, and above all else, they make you feel like you are a person transported in time to the Wild West. Not many other games can give you a similar feeling. With each game Rockstar makes, the level of detail and attention put forth into the game's narrative, mechanics, and world design increases, something that will ultimately be shown and proved again when Red Dead Redemption 2 releases within the next couple of weeks. It's not a game to sleep on. Rockstar is one of those studios that whenever they release a game, it's the talk of the town. Everyone is playing that game, whatever it is. And if Grand Theft Auto 5's overwhelming success and continual growth 5 years after its initial launch is any indication, then Rockstar will have another massive hit on their hands, and we will have a game that many will point to as a shining example of what the video game medium is able to achieve. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you got to this point, leave a comment saying what you're most looking forward to in Red Dead Redemption 2. Hope you have a nice day, and see you in the next video.